A blockbuster driver swap is starting to gain traction in the paddock, and it's the kind of twist that could flip the current Formula One grid on its head. George Russell, once considered the future of Mercedes, is now being whispered as a potential recruit for Red Bull. But nothing in F1 happens in isolation. At the heart of this tangled web sits Max Verstappen, and surprisingly, his former teammate Sergio Pérez. Imagine this: Pérez trading in his Red Bull overalls for Mercedes black, and Russell making the reverse journey to join Red Bull. A stunning reversal of roles that could reignite old rivalries under entirely new circumstances. But how likely is this seismic shakeup? And more importantly, just how much influence does Verstappen wield in this entire equation? As we enter one of the wildest and most chaotic, silly seasons in recent memory, Red Bull, the team that once dominated the opening chapters of this regulatory era, might now be the catalyst for a complete reshuffling of F1's power structure. Their recent dip in form has put Max Verstappen in an uncomfortable and unfamiliar position, one where his future with the Austrian squad is no longer set in stone. Helmut Marko himself recently hinted at the contractual escape hatch that could allow Verstappen to walk away if Red Bull isn't delivering results. Specifically, if Max isn't consistently running among the top 2 or 3, he's reportedly free to explore other opportunities come the summer break. And if he pulls that lever, you can bet that both Mercedes and Aston Martin will be circling like vultures. Conventional wisdom would suggest Verstappen might lean toward Mercedes, a team with a proven track record from the turbo-hybrid era. But times are changing, and so are the calculations of elite drivers. Aston Martin, quietly building an empire behind the scenes, now boasts 2 key ingredients: a partnership with Honda, set to power them from 2026, and the technical wizardry of Adrian Newey, recently linked with the team. Combine that with their cutting-edge facilities in Silverstone, and suddenly, Aston becomes a very enticing destination. Word around the paddock suggests that Lawrence Stroll is prepared to go all in, with whispers of a $300 million offer over 3 years being floated, an eye-watering sum even in F1 terms. But for Verstappen, this might not even be about the money. The sheer potential of Aston Martin's future, plus the comfort of having a non-threatening teammate like Lance Stroll, makes the scenario increasingly attractive. Now, let's play this forward. Verstappen makes the call and walks away from Red Bull. What happens next is a shockwave that could rival even Lewis Hamilton's surprise jump to Ferrari. Unlike Mercedes, Red Bull lacks a ready-made successor. Young talents like Isaac Hadjar have shown glimpses of promise in junior categories, but promoting them directly to a top team like Red Bull may be a stretch too far. In such a scenario, signing someone like George Russell becomes more than a clever move, it becomes a necessity. And with Pérez potentially sliding into Russell's vacated Mercedes seat, the grid resets in a way no one could have foreseen even a few months ago. The dominoes are lining up. All it takes is for Verstappen to flick the first one. In what could be interpreted as a high-stakes gamble, Red Bull might soon be forced into making a drastic move to clear the path for rising talent Arvid Lindblad within their junior program. With limited room for development seats, and the need to keep their young pipeline flowing, the Austrian team may find itself prioritizing proven race winners over experimental prospects. Enter George Russell. Russell's name has already surfaced in the inner circles of Red Bull racing. Whispers of early contact and exploratory discussions have been quietly circulating, a contingency plan, should the situation at Mercedes or Red Bull spiral out of control. One such scenario: Mercedes deciding to lure Max Verstappen away. Another: Verstappen himself choosing to walk away from Red Bull entirely. Either outcome would leave the energy drink giants with a gaping leadership void heading into the radically new 2026 regulations. In such a climate of uncertainty, Red Bull might be compelled to sign an established name with the experience and racercraft to anchor a team in transition. And George Russell, despite his youth, ticks many of those boxes. But ironically, Russell's own seat at Mercedes may be less secure than it appears. That's where the unexpected rivalry with young Italian sensation Andrea Kimi Antonelli enters the frame. Although still a rookie, Antonelli has begun turning heads with his composure and raw pace, enough that some in the paddock believe he could be ready for the big stage sooner rather than later. If the Italian keeps delivering strong performances, it could destabilize Russell's hold on his current drive. This lingering tension might explain why Russell's contract extension with Mercedes remains unsigned, an unusual situation for a driver of his caliber. While Toto Wolff and Russell project confidence, claiming that everything is on track and negotiations will unfold in due time, not everyone is buying that story. Sky Sports F1 analyst Martin Brundle recently voiced concerns, noting that it's atypical for a top-tier driver to approach the final months of his deal without pen on paper. Mercedes keeps saying, "We're his employer, we'll sort it later this year," Brundle said. But let's be honest, a driver of Russell's status would normally be locked down much earlier. That's just how it works in this sport. So yeah, it's a bit strange. Maybe they're applying some pressure. His comments hinted at underlying doubts within the Brackley camp. And this is where the conversation circles back to Sergio Pérez. Pérez has faced enormous scrutiny in recent months, often blamed for not extracting maximum performance from the RB20. But when you compare his results with those of Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda in the sister team, it's hard not to wonder whether the car itself was the real problem. Sure, Checo has areas for improvement, particularly in adapting to Red Bull's unique setup philosophy, but let's not forget how rare it is for drivers to fully acclimate to machinery that fundamentally doesn't suit their driving style. Still, despite the criticism, Pérez has re-emerged as a hot property on the driver market. With Cadillac entering the F1 fray and reportedly keen on securing his services, it's clear the Mexican veteran still carries significant value. And if a driver shuffle begins, Verstappen to Mercedes, Russell to Red Bull, then the dominoes could fall in a way that lands Pérez at Mercedes. According to motorsport.com, that's not just speculation. They report a very real possibility of Pérez becoming a Mercedes driver, especially if the team begins to see Antonelli as the more promising long-term bet compared to Russell. And while Russell has repeatedly shown flashes of brilliance and championship potential, Antonelli's rise is gathering momentum with every race weekend. The pressure is on. The paddock knows it. The fans sense it. And deep inside the boardrooms at Brackley and Milton Keynes, plans are quietly forming. The silly season isn't just heating up, it's about to explode. One point that deserves attention is that Toto Wolff had previously dismissed Sergio Pérez as a viable option for Mercedes, especially in the aftermath of the shocking announcement regarding Hamilton's departure. At the time, the decision appeared to be largely influenced by Checo's form at Red Bull, a performance level that many considered below par. However, the landscape has shifted dramatically in recent weeks. Recent displays from drivers like Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda have exposed cracks in the Red Bull package, proving that the car may not be the unbeatable machine many assumed it was. These revelations have added nuance to the scrutiny Pérez endured, and now Mercedes may be re-evaluating their stance. Reports suggest that preliminary talks have already taken place, a strong indication that the Brackley-based team is keeping its options open, especially if their current trajectory changes. But Mercedes isn't the only player showing interest. Cadillac, preparing its entrance into Formula One, appears to be the leading candidate for Pérez's next home. And it's easy to understand why. Beyond his capabilities on the track, Pérez brings considerable commercial value. His massive fan base in the United States, combined with the potential sponsorship deals he could attract, makes him an extremely appealing figure for any team, particularly a new entry looking to establish a strong identity. An ex-Formula One champion who now serves in Cadillac's leadership has even hinted that Checo is one of their most attractive options moving forward. The two sides were reportedly in active dialogue throughout the Miami Grand Prix weekend. Judging by the tone of those conversations, a partnership may be announced sooner than anyone expected. Still, from a strategic standpoint, Pérez might benefit from playing the long game. If developments at Mercedes continue to unfold unpredictably, he could find himself in contention for a seat that would allow him to fight for wins from day one, particularly with the sweeping regulation changes coming in 2026. Of course, the role Pérez would occupy at Mercedes would differ significantly from what he'd enjoy at Cadillac. With the American team, he'd likely be the clear team leader. At Mercedes, he'd probably take on a mentorship role alongside Antonelli, who is being groomed as their long-term star. But there's another curveball in this driver market drama: Alpine. The sudden reappearance of Flavio Briatore in the French team's management, combined with the decision to swap Jack Doohan for Franco Colapinto, signals one thing: Alpine isn't fully convinced by its current driver lineup. And that uncertainty opens the door for a seasoned, marketable, and reliable name like Pérez. Alpine, powered by Mercedes engines and aiming to re-establish itself in the midfield, is in desperate need of both consistency and funding. Pérez could bring both. And knowing Briatore, one of the most cunning and experienced deal-makers in Formula One history, it wouldn't be surprising to see him pull every string possible to bring the Mexican driver on board. Pairing two former Red Bull drivers in the Alpine garage could be the start of an intriguing new chapter. Yet despite the noise from Cadillac and Alpine, Mercedes may still represent the most realistic path for Pérez, if the other options don't materialize. The pivotal question remains: will Verstappen truly leave Red Bull for Aston Martin? And if he does, will it push Mercedes to go for a more balanced lineup, blending youth with veteran experience? With all that said, could we be on the verge of seeing George Russell in Red Bull colors while Sergio Pérez makes a dramatic return to a top team like Mercedes? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And once you've done that, don't forget to check out the video now appearing on your screen. We break down every twist and turn in this wild F1 silly season.